Game Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome into the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show, and for the 10th time this season, a victorious edition of the post-game scoreboard show. The number one Oregon Ducks, 39, Maryland, 18. The Ducks winners, 21 points in Autzen Stadium. The number one team in the land stays undefeated for another week. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. Fellas, how are we doing?
I'm doing weird, kind of like how that game.
That's fair.
It's weird. Like normally I'd like to come in and be like, I'm doing elite, a la PJ Fleck, like I'm out here killing it. But I just kind of feel like it was a weird Saturday all around. You avoided anything terrible happening. You didn't go full Miami Mario Cristobal. But at the
same, a lot of chaos today that did not involve the Ducks.
At the same time, I don't feel like you're super happy about how you looked.
It wasn't a particularly satisfying win, was it, Schultze?
I don't know, what's the word? Herky-jerky, I think we've used a few different times over the last couple of seasons we've all hosted together to describe maybe a game or two throughout the Ducks season. This was a herky-jerky, hard-fought, gritty win, I feel like, for Oregon. It was
just a little off, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just from the start, you kind of expected Oregon to keep their foot on this team's throat that they've literally never hosted before, and to start the game and to start the third quarter, it just wasn't that way. So a little scary, a little weird.
Yeah, so let's talk about that point in the game. I'm kind of looking at it as like the Ducks winning a grinder. I don't know why I'm considering it a grinder game. Maybe because it felt like you had to go such long stretches without the football, and we can talk a little bit later about whether that's potentially a bluept to try and beat Oregon in the future with some ball control, because it seemed like they were really out of rhythm tonight, and there could be a couple reasons for that. I know we had a little bit of an O-line shuffle. We've had some personnel changes in the receiving group as well. So there's a lot of things that can go into it, but ultimately a game where you don't play your best, where you rack up a bunch of penalties, so it's not particularly clean, you still come away with a 3-touchdown victory. And I think all things considered, even though it didn't maybe feel right and look right at times, you got the right result.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about just finding a way to win in advance,
sure.
Right? Valvano said it best, survive in advance, and that's what you're doing right now if you're the Oregon Ducks, because your style points don't really matter. And, this is a bold take, but it's probably the correct one. Like, with this win, you probably convinced you're in the playoffs. You're going to be in the playoffs. If doomsday scenario happens and you lose next week to Wisconsin and you lose to UW, you're still probably getting into the playoff. You probably clinched a playoff spot.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think that that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But I think that going into the last three games, when you looked at them, this wasn't the game that you were worried about. The game that you were worried about was Wisconsin, because of what the weather could be like. And at times, that Wisconsin offense, when it's clicking, has looked really good. I mean, they took Penn State all the way into the third quarter in a really close game if they don't throw a bad pick six. So you didn't expect this one to be the one that you really had to sweat it out. You knew that the UW game is going to be weird because it's a rivalry game, and you're going to get their best shot because no matter what, their season is won, or at least there's a nice thing to talk about the season if they beat you. So this should have been the easy game, and it just didn't feel like that.
Yeah, it's also, and we talked with Dan Lanning about this on Primetime on Friday when he calls into the show, but it seems like they were due for a letdown at some point, and you're coming off even though it was a convincing victory, it seemed like an emotional victory going to Michigan, and this was the spot in your schedule that was kind of ripe for a letdown, and so it's not entire, but at the same time you also know you're trying to avoid it, and I think it's exceptionally hard for any football season, but especially one with college kids, to keep everyone engaged and get everyone's best every single week. And luckily, for this team, it's deep enough, talented enough, well coached enough that even when you don't get your absolute best effort, you can still win convincingly like they did today. And that's a big testament to all of their personnel that they have going into this thing. But I do want to focus in on really when the tide turned, because it seemed like the Oregon offense couldn't get much going early on. And there came a point at the start of the third quarter, and now Dan Lanning's been hearing for a week and a half about how the team can't score in the third quarter, that he just said, you know what, I'm done with all of this. Like, throw the kitchen sink at him. I don't care. And that led to a fake punt in which we saw Jordan Birch, all 295 pounds, in the open field, going 36 yards to then set up the Jernoris Wilson score. By the way, the record breaker from Dylan Gabriel. We haven't even mentioned that yet. Dylan Gabriel making college football history. We'll get more on that in just a minute. And then you follow it up with Josh Connerly converting the 2-point try at the end of it. And conveniently, that'll also bring us to our Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day secret score.
And the Ducks Game Day secret score this week, Will, is 920. That's 920. That is the total beef that the impact plays on that drive took. You get 295 pounds from Birch, 310 pounds from Janoris Wilson, 315 from Connerly for a nice round 920 on that drive. You don't need to remember why it was 920, but remember that number of 920 in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday morning's Dirt and Sprague. And when you hear that cue to text in, you could be the one to win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It is more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. When we look at that third quarter sequence, both Oregon and Maryland come out flat to start the third quarter. They trade short possessions. At that point, when I don't know, and we'll ask Dusty about this too, whether it's Lanning, whether it's Stein, other people pulling the strings, saying, "Let's do something different. Let's do something a little bit radical. Let's run a fake here." For you, like that you're going to that to shake things up and make something happen in that moment, or more frustrated that you have to dip into the bag of tricks to get something going?
I don't really care. I think that you were looking for a certain look. Like Dusty during the game, he goes, "Hey, it's just like last year with Rodgers. They did the same thing against Colorado where Rodgers catches it and he took off." To me, that tells me that Colorado last year was giving a very similar look to what Maryland was giving you in this game. And so it was schemed up for before the game, and they had practiced it and they had ran it. And hey, if we're in, between the 30 and the 30 and we're on the right hash, you're probably going to get this look. And if you get this look, this is the fake that we're going to do. And so I don't necessarily think that you had to do it. I don't necessarily think that Coach Lanning went out there and was like, "We're calling this fake." It was, you got the look that you thought you were going to get and you ran the fake. And the only reason you wouldn't run the fake is if you were up by 40 at that point.
And I guess that's the thing I love about this staff.
That's coaching.
It seems like they, and maybe more than a lot of others, it seems like they have something for every situation, and they have a lot in their back pocket. They have a lot holstered and ready to go, and it seems like they are ultimately prepared for every possible scenario. And then when that scenario presents itself, you're already ready to go. And that's one of the most impressive things about this staff to me.
Interesting, though, that you point out that they pull it out in what was, a pretty bleak quarter for them. The third quarter has been kind of a black hole. Coming into today, it was 3 points for Oregon all season in the third quarter, and they came out again in their first drive and they went 3 and out. But you heard Dan Lanning, I think, with Dusty in the postgame talking about how they practiced that Josh Connerly 2-point conversion 50 times in practice. So I'm assuming they are practicing that fake punt. And not only are they looking for the correct situation, but, like you said, Buck, maybe it was time for Dan Lanning finally to just be like, we need to do something different in the third quarter, and maybe this is the time to throw something unexpected at them. Because right after that, didn't they follow it up with a flea flicker? They did the fake punt, 36-yard run by Jeffrey Bossa, and then a flea flicker, which wasn't successful, but it just seems like, okay,
the full bag of tricks.
Yeah, I need to do something here.
Yeah, and then, of course, you followed up by putting in a tackle who hasn't played all season to catch a touchdown pass, which ends up being a record breaker. And then you have your big hog molly up front taking the 2-point conversion. So lots of tricks there. And then also want to make sure before we get too far into the show that we give Dylan Gabriel his flowers. Obviously, he's had as many opportunities to do it as anybody in college history with redshirting in the extra COVID year and all that. But 179 total touchdowns now, passing Case Keenum for the most accounted for all time. It's a combination of rushing and passing, but he breaks the record, and now your forever trivia answer, Jernoris Wilson, offensive tackle, with the record-breaking touchdown.
How high up do you think that number gets? Because we're counting all the rest of Oregon's games.
Yeah.
Yep.
How high up does that number get? Because when you really think about it, that could become a very astronomical number.
Almost an unbreakable number.
To be honest, I would have, if I'm Case Keenum, I would have thought that it was.
Yeah.
Because the only reason that it was as high as it was because Case Keenum started from
for
day
all 4
one.
years, right?
Right. And Case knew that he was going to be a mid-round pick at best. Like, Case Keenum had to play perfect in college to be a day 3 draft pick. Not necessarily saying that Dylan Gabriel isn't going to be. Like, there's a reason why Dylan Gabriel is still in college. But just with the way that college football is trending now, I think you're more likely to see guys who are 1-2 year starters and bouncing to the NFL than you are to see guys who stick around for the full 5.
For sure.
It's not what they do anymore. So I think when it's all said and done, like, we could be looking at a quarterback who gets close to 200 accounted for touchdowns.
So that's what I was wondering is do we knock on the door of 200? Because you have the 2 games left regular season. You're assuming at this point in time you're getting a Big Ten championship game.
You should get at minimum 4.
A minimum of 4 games. So you would still need 5 touchdowns a game. But if you get 6 games, now you get a 3 or 4 or 5 touchdown game in there. You might be talking. You make a championship run.
7.
I think you're cracking it. So
4 times 3 is 12. Yeah, there's definitely a possibility.
It's in play. Let's say.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, let's keep this thing on the rails and rolling. The Oregon Ducks will roll 39-18 over Maryland. We'll talk to Anthony Newman next. Some big plays from the secondary, and they needed them against a pretty good Maryland aerial attack. We'll talk to Anthony Newman coming up next. But first, we'll toss it over to Schulte, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victoricos Mexican Food. Order Victoricos for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate that, Buck. Actually, one of the smoother drives I've seen out of Eugene all season. It seems like people started getting out of the stadium maybe a bit before the final down of the fourth quarter. Looking at maybe about an extra 10 minutes I-5 North out of Eugene right now towards the Coburg area, and I do see a Smoky in the Albany area on I-5 North right now. 50 in Portland, the Ducks post-game forecast calling for a low of 44. Tomorrow, rain with a high of 57. It'll be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend.
Are you working out, eating healthy, doing all the right things, but still not seeing the right result? Well, it could all be down to your metabolism. But now, there's a way of understanding how your nutrition and lifestyle fit into the bigger picture. Learn how your body shifts from burning carbs to burning fat for energy with Lumen. Go to lumen.me right now for 30% off.
Yard field goal try, just inside the 28. 37.5-yard try. Snap coming. Good placement. Good kick is up. And I think he nailed this one too. He did. Maryland will take the early lead. 3-0.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner, Jordan Schultz here with you. A reminder that you can reach us on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-864-6326. Let us know your thoughts if you're coming home from Autzen Stadium, if you're sitting at home on your couch. What did you think of the game? What stood out? What do you want to see improved? We can get to all of that. We're also over on YouTube at 1080 The Fan, and we'll be getting Anthony Newman on here shortly, and I think he's actually joining us right now. You hear him on the Ducks Game Day pregame show as well as Monday's Ducks Roundtable. Anthony, tonight's game, a little bit off, felt a little bit off. We called it herky-jerky here in the studio. What did you make of a not exactly clean 3-score victory?
Well, it's a win.
It is a win.
And it's an ugly win, and that's okay to have those. You can't be perfect all year. They're humans. They're going to make mistakes. Kids mess up, and it's hard to get up for a team like Maryland, who's not very good, but you find a way to win. And what was it, 39-18, something like that?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it wasn't bad. There's a lot of mistakes. I think, like Dan Lanning says it all the time, it's not about the other team. Are we beating ourselves? And that happened. You didn't lose the game, but against a good football team, you could beat yourself with those mistakes they made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Anthony, when you're watching the D-line, I mean, most weeks I go into the box score and it's like, okay, well, there's a couple of sacks, there's a couple of tackles for loss, then there's things that I saw where it's like, hey, you're creating havoc, you're in the backfield. That's not the case after this game. What was Maryland doing, or what was Oregon's D-line not doing?
Well, I think, there was more max protection from Maryland, so they keep either the tight end or the running back in to block. And so now you have a bunch of double teams. And then Oregon was just sitting either a 3-man rush or a 4-man rush, and those guys couldn't get off the double team. Normally you would see, Harmon get off the double team and get to the quarterback, and he was. I mean, they were getting at the quarterback. The quarterback was running out of the pocket, but he was making plays, or he was running for the first down. And you see they didn't have a spy for the quarterback because they didn't think he was a threat, but he did some smart things. Sometimes a team has a good game plan against you, and not every time that you're going to go out there and just dominate a certain offense, but it's still domination by the final score.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Did you win the game, and what was the score?
Yeah.
Talking to Anthony Newman here, the former Ducks star safety and NFL vet as well. Anthony, speaking of the Ducks secondary today, I think a lot of people don't think much of Maryland, but their passing attack actually pretty formidable, and they had some dudes lining up at receiver, and their quarterback honestly stood in there against a good Ducks defense and could sling it a little bit. What did you make of the back end of this secondary today? Some different players and different faces coming up with big plays today.
Well, their passing offense is ranked 10th in the nation.
Yeah,
they got two receivers on the outside. They're going to be in the top with 3 rounds in the NFL draft. Okay, they're top receivers. Oregon was challenged in the back end, and it works with the front end. If you're not getting pressure and the quarterback has time to throw the football, or he gets out of the pocket and he'll buy time downfield, then those guys will get open. You can't cover a good receiver for more than 3 seconds. You really can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And then these guys are good. We have to give them credit.
For sure.
We do have to give them credit because they are big-time receivers. They don't have a supporting cast.
I was impressed with their personnel. I thought they were good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe, when you look at the record and you're going, what, are they that bad? But they don't look that bad when they're playing. They play pretty well. It was a good test for Oregon. It was a good test. When things go wrong, how do you deal with the next play? Adversity. Adversity is going to happen in football all the time. So how do you bounce back? The guy's making catch after catch after catch. What kind of adjustments do you need to make as a defensive back to guard this guy? And, they were playing zone and man and trying to help out, but sometimes they're just better than you. So you can't cry about that.
What was Maryland's defense that made Oregon's offense look, I don't want to say inept, but it did not look as strong as it has looked the last 2 or 3 weeks? What were they doing?
I think that was all Oregon. It wasn't Maryland. It was Oregon. It's just they were in a funk. It was just you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You just, you feel lazy when you're trying to run routes. You're not getting open. You're kind of standing around. I saw when Gabriel was scrambling a couple of times, the receivers were standing. They weren't running. They weren't, doing the scramble rules, run to the sideline or go deep. They were just standing there. And that's a sign of laziness. That's the sign of, we're going to win this game. This team is not that good. I'll be lazy today. And that happens. But it's okay for that to happen, okay, because now you can go back and look at film and go, look, this can't happen moving forward. When we go back to Wisconsin, no, you can't do this. This team is much better than the team we just played. So it's a learning process, and you have to make mistakes to learn, to move forward.
Anthony, you mentioned Wisconsin, and going all the way back to August, that is a game that I know you have had circled as one that the Ducks need to look out for. And certainly now this time of year, as you're getting late and you're seeing upsets all across the country, Oregon now a little bit dinged up too. You're missing Tez Johnson, not sure what Marcus Harper's status is going to be. You're going on the road against a good team. What concerns you, or what are the things you want to see this team tighten up before they go to Camp Randall next week?
The bad weather, the coldness back there. I'm not going to lie.
A heat wave?
And Will, you know this. I mean, if you're, on the West Coast and it's, 50 degrees, 55, you get rain, and all of a sudden you go somewhere and it's 25 degrees. There's a difference. I don't care what you say. And you can say all the words Coach can talk about. Let's be tough. Don't worry about the weather, all that. Okay, that's fine and dandy till I get on the field and go, it's freezing out here. It's cold. And these hits, they hurt because it's so cold because my body hurts. So, and they're out there practicing in that right now. They're getting ready for Oregon. So that game, and you said that's the game that from day one, that scares me. That scares me. And now we're beat up. We got some injuries. It's going to be a ball game. That's going to be a tough game there.
Well, we will break it all down Monday on Ducks Roundtable with Anthony Newman. Anthony, always appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to talking to you on Monday about a 10-0 Oregon Ducks team.
All right, thanks, guys.
That is Anthony Newman. You hear him every week on Ducks Game Day as well as Ducks Roundtable. Appreciate him joining us. We need to move on to the biggest monster of the day. We saw him rush the passer, force a fumble. We even saw him with a 36-yard carry that sparked a monumental touchdown drive. We're talking about Jordan Birch, maybe the most impactful person on that defense. We'll talk about that next, but first, toss it over to Schultze, who has the Ducks Game Day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Appreciate that, Buck. We're still looking at some slowing out of Eugene if you're leaving that immediate area on I-5 northbound. Expect an extra 10 minutes or so getting up to the Coburg area. As far as Smokies go, I do see one I-5 north passing the Coburg area and one north of Albany on I-5 as well. 50 in Portland right now. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 44. Next week, it's going to be in the 50s and actually a low of only 49 in Madison, Wisconsin next Saturday when Oregon heads there to face the Badgers.
Bellagio's Pizza, Northwest owned and operated since 1996. This is Mike Barrett. Bellagio's has been a family favorite of ours for years. I love that they're local, that they give back to the community, to schools, to organizations. But mostly I love that Bellagio's Pizza is so good. If you've had it, you know what I'm talking about. The dough and sauce are still made fresh in Wilsonville every day. They've stayed
Show me touchdown. Haven't seen the signal yet, but he got it in. Touchdown, Oregon.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. The number one Oregon Ducks, certain to be number one again next week. They improved to 10-0 on the season with a 39-18 win over Maryland, and now they get set to pack their bags and head to Madison, Wisconsin next week, where the Badgers will be waiting. But first, more on this game, and I want to talk to Dusty Hara coming up next about some of the injuries in this game and what the personnel situation is going to be looking like next week in Madison. But someone who has missed time this year, came back, has flashed all of their immense talent, but then got nicked up again towards the end of the night. Jordan Birch, an absolutely unbelievable game from him. I know that the fake punt is going to stand out, but he looked so dominant on the edge tonight, Will.
Yes.
It was maybe the most impressed I've ever been with him, just in all of his assignments on the defensive line for an entire game. He looked stellar tonight.
This was like the first game where I didn't feel like you really had a rush. Like, you got 2 sacks in this game, but the only rush that was coming was because of Jordan Birch. Like,
He was the rush. Yeah.
Right. When you've had a rush in the past, there hasn't been a game where I didn't feel like you had a rush. Let me get that out of the way first. Yeah. But it felt like it came from a variety of different people. Derek Harmon was getting pressure up the middle. Mateo Uiagalelei, he's coming off the side. They're blitzing guys like Betcher or Tatum Tuioti, just creating havoc. It's what he does best. Where in this week, it felt like kind of what Anthony was saying, and I wanted to get his opinion as a defensive guy, but when I was watching it, it's like Maryland has decided they are going to go max protect. Mm-hmm. They are not going to let Oregon's pass rush hit home without them sacrificing more guys.
They'll take fewer options downfield and make sure that they're not rushed, rattled, hurried, right?
Right. Because if Oregon could get after them in that way, like they did against Illinois, like they did against Michigan, like they did against Michigan State, Maryland knows they don't have the guys to compete with them. So their whole plan was, we're going to give our quarterback as much time as possible, and eventually someone will pop open because someone has to pop open. That's just how it is. Well, Jordan Birch, when they were getting to him, it was because of him. That sack fumble, they just played it on a replay in here right now. He beats a double team to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's asking a lot. You're beating a double team. You're beating 600 pounds minimum of man who's trying to stop you at all costs, and then you're still getting to the quarterback in 3 seconds before he's able to get rid of the ball. It was a very impressive game for Birch because this is why you talked about him being the big transfer last year. This is why he gets all the hype. Mateo Uiagalelei has had a great season, and he's going to be like Jordan Birch. He might be better than Jordan Birch when it's all said and done. But right now, your number one guy that you have to have win one-on-ones, and sometimes he has to win two-on-ones, is Jordan Birch. And today, when you needed it most, it felt like he came up big.
He's been really stellar for them, but also saw him towards the end of this game get banged up. I don't know whether it was the same leg that he had surgery on that caused him to miss a couple weeks, and we'll certainly ask Dusty Hare about that. I know the team won't look beyond Wisconsin, but we have the luxury of being able to do that here on this show. How far could the Ducks go if they didn't have Jordan Birch? How crucial is he to their national championship aspiration success? Could you win a title without him?
Well, ask a more difficult question. Like, you should ask my opinion on like different political things that are going on right now in our country, because you've played multiple games without Jordan Birch and you won them. You beat the number 2 team in the country without Jordan Birch. Jordan Birch got hurt on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then you played the number 1 team in the country, now the number 2, and you beat them. You did. So can you beat anyone in the country without Jordan Birch? Yes. But it would be a hell of a lot easier if you had Jordan Birch. You know what I mean? So
I do.
You can win a lot of football games. You can win against the best teams in the country without him. But I'd much rather have him on my side.
Obviously, we've talked about how this game kind of had a funky game flow to it, and the Oregon defense was on the field a lot, Will. So beyond beyond just Jordan Birch, and I know that we were maybe people didn't give enough credit going into the Maryland passing attack. What did you just make of the defense's effort across the board against a pretty proficient Maryland offense?
I felt like the offense of Oregon didn't help out the defense of Oregon.
I would agree.
They left them out to dry multiple times, especially with a lot of quick 3-and-outs. Like, the beauty of Oregon and their ability to tempo is that there are times where you leave your defense out to dry. In this game, it felt like you left them out to dry. And Maryland had a really good game plan. They were going to run the clock down as much as they possibly could. They were going to run the football, which they were able to do, maybe not as effectively as they wanted to, but enough that it kept Oregon honest and they couldn't commit. And they did a really good job of having a bunch of short, quick routes that they could get the ball out of their quarterback's hand as fast as possible. Did they go max protection? Yes, 100% they did, because they didn't trust that O-line to win one-on-one against Oregon's D-line, and I don't blame them. There aren't many O-lines that can win one-on-one against Oregon's D-line. But it was, let's get the ball out fast, we're going to sit on the ball, we're going to dominate the time of possession, and then hopefully in the fourth quarter, it's a ball game. And there was never a point where I felt nervous about Oregon losing this game, but there was also never a point where I felt like comfortable about Oregon winning this game. And so Maryland did a good job of doing what they could do to stay in it, but it was never really Maryland's game to win.
At one point, it was about an 8-minute difference in time of possession. I think Maryland winning that against Oregon because, Oregon's offense couldn't stay on the field. But remember, as we've been talking about, they don't have two of their starters in Marcus Harper and Tez Johnson, and especially in the wide receiving core. I know Dylan Gabriel was forced to make some decisions. Maybe he normally wouldn't, but it was obvious that they were missing Tez tonight. I think that was a big reason why the defense was on the field a lot longer.
It worried me. I would be worried as an Oregon fan what was going on with the absence of Tez. You did not win one-on-one routes in the middle of the field. That check down that Gabriel always had that everyone kind of ripped on him for, that middle cross that Tez is so good at, running somewhere between 5 to 8 yards and then making someone miss and getting 15 to 20 out of it, it just wasn't there. And that allowed the defense to sit more safeties back so that Evan Stewart couldn't beat you deep. It worries me how the checkdowns were not getting broken away from. Now, to give this Maryland team credit, they beat a pretty decent USC team. They've played a lot of really close games against some decent teams this year, but that's something that I think Oregon is going to have to fix. If they don't fix it by Wisconsin, it has to get fixed by UW because it's something that UW and Wisconsin can and will take advantage of.
Their only chunk play today was Jordan Birch's 36-yard run on the fake punt. They literally had no chunk plays other than that.
Right.
Yeah, you had the Evan Stewart touchdown was 17 yards. You had a Jordan James catch and run for 26, but you're right. There was not the same explosivity that you have had, and it's something that we need to talk about coming up next with our friend Dusty Harry. He is down on the sideline. I'm very curious to know about the availability of certain personnel. We've already talked about Tez's absence and Marcus Harper's absence, but if you were listening to the radio broadcast, Jordan James barely touched the ball in the second half, and Trayshawn Holden got dinged in the first half. So I'm wondering who we're going to have at Camp Randall next week. We'll get Dusty in here coming up next to get, well, an injury report of sorts. What did he observe from the sidelines? We'll get that next. You're listening to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Now it's time for Schulte with the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online. Pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. Still a bit of heavy traffic out of Eugene on I-5 North. About an extra 10 minutes or so tapping your brakes out of that area. And I do see a couple of Smokies, one north of Albany, actually two north of Albany, in between there and Salem. It's probably about 5 miles or so before you hit the Enchanted Forest area. 50 in Portland right now. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 44. It's going to be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend. Only a low of 49.
Your home for Oregon Ducks football is KFXX KWJJ HD2 Portland.
Go to the house!
1080 The Fan, an Odyssey sports station. We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Ducks adjust defensively. Snap, Edwards Jr. back to throw. Looks middle, hit, ball came out. That might be a fumble. All the way downfield quickly. Brandon Johnson, nobody can catch him from behind. 10, 5, touchdown! touchdown if it's ruled a fumble. Touchdown, Oregon.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, post-game traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks post-game scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods PDX, Victor Rico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks post-game scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. The Oregon Ducks winners 39-18, the number one team in the land, beating Maryland to improve to 10-0 on the season. That number one ranking sure to stick for at least another week. We are going to connect now with our friend Dusty Hara. You hear him every broadcast with the Toyota sideline mic. And Dusty, usually the first thing I like to ask you is, what did you notice from the sideline tonight? But I actually have specific questions about what you may or may not have seen on the sideline tonight, because kind of need you to be our eyes and ears with some of this stuff. We know that Dan Lanning is going to play coy with a lot of it, and the broadcast can't see a lot either. Some injury stuff tonight. Jordan Birch nicked up late. Yeah. Trayshawn Holden nicked up early, and Jordan James pretty much absent during the second half. What, if anything, can you tell us about what you saw with those three guys tonight?
I'm sworn to secrecy. No, look, it's actually, and I know the doom and gloom, and people want to, it seems worrisome. Jordan James is trying to get back in the game, but I think they were holding him back because they knew they didn't really need him. Mm-hmm. Even though, it was a 14-point margin at that point, and they felt comfortable with the way that Noah Whittington was running. And at this point in the year, this is the 10th game that these guys have played. Your wear and tear, hits start adding up. I truly believe Dan Lanning when he said in his post game that, look, they were just being, it was precautionary, and they wanted to see, if you don't have to expose them to more hits, don't do it. And look, Noah Whittington was running the ball effectively. Mm-hmm. As effectively as they ran the ball tonight, which wasn't very effectively when Jordan Birch is your second leading rusher. With Jordan Birch, he came off the field, and obviously all eyes are going to be on him because of the ankle injury that he is recovering from. But I will say that he was walking around. He was limping a little bit, but I feel like anytime he's not taped up, he's limping a lot.
Do you know, was it a re-aggravation of the same injury, or was it something different?
No idea.
Okay.
I don't know about that, but the way he got landed on and kind of rolled up on,
yeah.
I think that it probably is the same ankle, but I mean, he wasn't looking like a guy, and this is something that, if a guy gets seriously hurt, they take him out, they take him up the tunnel, they go and they look at it, whatever. That never happened with Jordan Birch. He stayed on the sideline the whole time. Like, right when it happened, he was like, yep, all right, we're going to cut the tape off and you're done for the night. But I wasn't overly worried about either one of those injuries. Trayshawn Holden, I mean, he just got, I think he got like a dead leg.
Yeah, like a deep Charlie horse and a bone bruise type deal.
Yeah, because he came back in the game and he elevated it across the middle and caught a ball that was incredible catch, where he had to use both of his legs, 2-foot jump, and elevate for it. So, he sat out for he didn't even sit out a full series. That was the time, he got injured, and then Oregon's offense didn't get on the field for 20 minutes of real time, but it was
so it seemed like he was more absent than he was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because of that. But the next series that the offense got the ball, Trayshawn was back on the field again. So
okay.
I think that might be he's a Ferrari. You get a little dust in the engine on a Ferrari, it goes down for a little bit, but then you get it revved back up and he's good to go. I didn't with the Tez Johnson injury. He was out during pregame warm-up, and Tez did not have a sling on during pregame warm-up. Yeah. So, I mean, we can take that for what it is. He didn't have a sling on during pregame. He was walking around. I won't say that he was like, fist pumping like a champ or anything, but that was encouraging to see just a week later, no sling on him. But, I think they kept him away from the sideline and away from the action, because you get a guy who's a dinged up shoulder, you don't want a guy flying out of bounds and taking him out, So I don't remember seeing him on the sideline after the pregame warm-up. So we did see Tez without a sling during the pregame warm-up. And I did see him go, and he dapped up a few guys and, gave a hug to some people. So, that is really encouraging on the Tez Johnson front.
Dusty, the offense seemed almost a little bit out of sorts. There weren't very many explosive plays. I mean, I think your second most explosive play is the fake punt, or it might be third if you're looking at it yardage-wise. How much is that offense actually missing Tez Johnson?
Number one.
Is it number one? Sorry, I'm bad at math. English major.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that was the longest play from scrimmage was the Jordan Birch fake punt, and then the second longest one, I believe, was the Jordan James
catch out of the backfield
right before he scored the touchdown. Yeah, when they went for it on 4th and 1, he got that run, and then they followed it up with the dump off for 26 yards, and then they paid it off with the touchdown. You're right. The explosives weren't there, and Tez Johnson, I think that you are onto something. He has been a safety valve, and there was a lot of criticism that Dylan Gabriel only targeted Tez Johnson and Terrence Ferguson early in the year. He developed rapport with all the other guys that we've started to see as the season has gone on, that the distribution of the ball has gone to other places. But I think where Oregon may be missing Tez the most is the use of motion and the gravity that Tez Johnson dictates when he is in motion. It's on a different level, right? Because you have a corner, a safety, and a linebacker all move when Tez goes in motion. And that is something that we know, we see, it is all the time. It doesn't matter who you're motioning in that offense, whether it's Justice Lowe or Kenyon Sadiq or Evan Stewart. Those guys don't command the gravity from a defense and the attention and the sets of eyes that 15 does because of his speed and his ability to run routes. I mean, Tez, for as fast as he is, he's a phenomenal route runner too, and his spatial awareness. Like, every level has to account for where Tez is going. So I think that is something that they were trying to work through in this game. But I give Maryland a ton of credit because they had a week off, and they were ready, man. They didn't come out flat. They looked like they were ready to go. And especially in the secondary and at wide receiver, they got dudes.
Yeah, they're good.
I mean, they've got legit dudes. We talk about there's, Ty Felton, the wide receiver. You talk about, number one, the other wide receiver. Those two guys get a lot of love as wide receivers. Their secondary, those guys look like NFL dudes. They're long, they're big, they're physical. I thought they did a phenomenal job of playing sound and fundamentally sound football out of that bye week. And, if Wisconsin is watching that game and trying to take anything from what they've been prepping for with a week off, too, because this is a weird quirk in the schedule where Oregon plays 3 teams in a row that are all coming off bye.
Yep.
You have
not ideal.
Maryland, Wisconsin, and then Washington, but Oregon also has a bye heading into the Washington game.
Right.
But it's one of those weird quirks in the schedule, and Maryland looked really good, man. I was really impressed by them. Up front, they're not there, but, I think that their skills are very talented.
They were I think they're the most impressive, maybe non-contending team that we've seen in the Big Ten so far. I mean, I thought they were much better than Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, obviously not Ohio State, but yeah, they looked, I thought they brought more to the table than I was expecting for sure. Dusty, one of the things with Oregon struggling with that Maryland defense a little bit, Oregon digging into their bag of tricks. They had the fake punt, they have a offensive tackle touchdown, they have a 2-point conversion. Kind of a 2-part question here. One, who has ultimate control over those trick plays when they happen. Will was surmising that it may have just been a look that they got that they really liked on the Jordan Burch play rather than a call that was coming in. But then additionally, I'm interested in who makes the personnel decision for who all that stuff goes to, because getting Jordan Burch out in the open field running was a sight to behold. Seeing Josh Connerly having a role in scoring on a 2-point conversion, then obviously bringing in a tackle that nobody's heard of yet to get the record-breaking touchdown for Dylan Gabriel. Who draws this up? Who decides who the personnel is going to be, and how does this all come to be?
Well, I think that it was a conscious effort. I don't think it was necessarily a look that they really loved, because almost the exact same part of the field and the exact same down and distance. Remember last year against Washington State, Casey Rogers, it's the exact same fake punt. The direct snap, and they snapped it to a defensive lineman. Last year it was Casey Rogers. And remember that momentum swing that gave Oregon in that moment against Washington State, where it became an avalanche downhill. And so I think that's Joe Lorick. I think he is one of the best special teams coordinators in the country. And I'm not just saying that because he's at Oregon. I have buddies that are special teams coordinators around the country at big-time programs that said, dude, he is money, and he is a really good one. And so I think that is Joe Lorick kind of developing that and making sure he's got that in his hip pocket. And then Will Stein is just in his bag. So Lorick they got that for both the fake punt and then the 2-point conversion too.
Because I was wondering if that was under special teams umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Lorick on the Connerly, and I don't know if they just they were feeding off each other. They were in the groove, but Janoris Wilson coming out and catching a touchdown, that wasn't like a, hey, in the moment, this is what we should do, and just like a spur of the moment thing, because if you're listening to the broadcast, right before the opening kickoff of the game, the referee his mic and he said 78 is now number 91 for Oregon. And that's Janoris Wilson.
Yeah.
Before they started the game, they had Wilson in a 91 jersey.
They had to make a correction.
And then after he scored it, and then after he scored that, the referee came on the mic and says 91 is now 78. So I think they were just waiting to get into the red zone to throw that. And they knew, we get into the red zone, this is what we're doing. We're going to go for it. We're going to do it. And big fella climbed the ladder and caught a touchdown. The thing that impressed me, and Ortner, I need your take on this.
Yeah.
Josh Connerly on the 2-point try, dude, he gave the zone read. He put the ball in the belly of the running back. He did a little slide step, pulled, and he hit the hole, man. He looked like a quarterback back there.
That's because what you skinny people don't realize is all of us fat boys are out there running zone read on NCAA football and on Madden 25, and we go when you guys aren't watching, and we
ready
practice
for the moment.
We practice it a lot. I don't know. Maybe aside from your starting quarterback, your probably next best zone read option player is in the offensive line room. You just don't know which player it is yet.
But I mean, think about that drive. That was the drive Oregon needed. It was their biggest drive of the game. It was right after a 3-and-out to start the third quarter. Everybody has been talking about the third quarter woes for Oregon. It looked like they were facing another 3-and-out. It was like, oh boy, here we go again. And then you have 900 pounds of fun to finish off that drive for a touchdown.
That's right.
I mean, you got Burch, who's like 280. Connerly is like 320. Wilson's like 340. I mean, you had 900 pounds.
You know what, Dusty?
Scoring those touchdowns.
I'll have you know that is what I made today's secret score in the very first segment. Usually we only give it out in the first and the seventh segment. But yeah, I added up the weight of those three boys. 920, your total beef leading to that touchdown.
My goodness, man. And that's just, I love to see that entire drive. I think that, they knew they were going to, that was the moment to swing momentum on that fourth down. They were definitely going to run that play to Wilson at some point in the low red area. And then I think the Connerly one was like, oh, the hell with it. We've already done, like, what are we going to lose here? Because they didn't really need the 2. It was just like, yeah, we're going to do this right now. But that was a little bit of fun in a game that it had some mundane, man. It didn't feel like it was an explosive game, but we've seen this from every team across the country this year. Every single team. Nobody is impervious to a performance like this. But Oregon won by 21.
Quick one for you, Dusty. Do we have a punter controversy? And maybe not controversy, but obviously we get 2 guys in there kicking today. It's not the first time we've seen both punters punt in the same game. But is this open competition? Is it situational? And any thoughts or insights there?
Yeah, I don't know what that is, and that's maybe some questions I'm going to start having to ask. Is like the handling, not just punters but kickers too,
sure,
right?
Of course, with Boyle, yeah.
We see Boyle like kick some field goals, long range field goals. They mix it up on kickoffs too, and I don't know the strategy behind it. I don't know how calculated that is, but it is interesting that I guess they feel like they've got 2 really good kickers and 2 really good punters. I don't know if there's a controversy right now or what's going on, but it's an interesting strategy you don't really see very often in football. If you have a kicker, that's your kicker until your kicker screws up, and then you put the other one in.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dusty, before we get you out of here, what's on tap for the program?
Oh, yeah, the program. We've got, obviously, recap of this game. We've got Michael De La Grange on, who is a really interesting dude. He'll be on this week's episode. He is a guy.
Former O lineman or D lineman? Yeah, offensive. Okay, yeah, I remember. He was my time.
O lineman, yeah. With Joey for a little bit and kind of crossed over into the Kellen Clemens range as an offensive lineman. Now he runs one of the collectives for the University of Oregon.
Okay.
So he's a self-made businessman after football. Now helps with the NIL front and the collective front. So we're going to chat with him, and then next week. I just saw Kenyon Varner today, and we were trying to line something up this past week, but Kenyon Varner will be on the next episode. So we're going to have Michael De La Grange this week. Next week, it'll be Kenyon Varner joining the program. So excited for both of those interviews. It's going to be awesome.
Definitely. I remember De La Grange. He was still there when I first got to the U of O, and saw Kenyon Varner on the Big Ten broadcast today, and he was excellent. So looking forward to hearing from him. Dusty, always appreciate your time and your insights. We'll be sure to catch you noon to 3, Danny and Dusty, Monday through Friday. Get home safely, friend.
All right, fellas. Have a good one.
That is Dusty Hara. He patrols the sidelines for the Oregon Ducks broadcasts, and as I mentioned, you can hear him every Monday through Friday, noon to 3 on Danny and Dusty. We got to keep this show rolling just as the Oregon Ducks are rolling. 39-18, they beat Maryland. The number 1 team in the land advances to 10-0 on the season. Coming up next, the O-line shuffle. How much of an impact is that having on the offense as a whole? But first, we toss it over to Schultz as the Ducks game day traffic and weather brought to you every 10 minutes by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery. Online at victorricos.com.
Thank you so much, Buck. As Dusty's driving home and seems to be on a pretty clear highway, I-5 North looking fairly open out of Eugene up to Portland. One smoky, though, I-5 North past Albany in between there and Salem. Maybe a couple, about 3 or 4 miles south of the Enchanted Forest area. Right now, 49 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 44. It'll be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend.
Football season is back, and that means Ducks game
Michigan. He had to go low to pick it up. Nice grab, hands underneath, rolled. Wait for the official to indicate. Touchdown, Terrence Ferguson.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. You heard it there, Terrence Ferguson. And during the game, I started thinking to myself, does Dylan Gabriel just need a new Tez? Because it feels like he's going to Ferg a lot.
Right.
Ferg with 6 catches tonight, and I know he had at least 3 or 4 more targets that did not get hauled in. So I do want to pick up on that conversation we started having before we talked to Dusty, with Dusty, and specifically this offense without Tez. Obviously, them not having the ball today for long stretches, I think adds to you being a little bit more disjointed, but how would you look at them wanting to remedy, or I guess better said, how would you expect them to try to remedy this in the week leading up to Wisconsin? What are the things that's ailing them, and what are the things that they can actually do about it?
I just didn't feel like over the middle of the field they made anyone miss. Like, no offense to Terrence Ferguson, that's not really what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He's going to catch the football in a spot where he has a guy on him, but he's taller than them, right?
And honestly, he's better in the spots where he kind of leaks out. He's the second option.
Yeah.
You have receivers taking people away.
He's the bottom route of the flood.
Yeah.
He's the easy completion. And that's not an attack on him. That's just a position
He's a great
plays.
tight end, but he shouldn't be the focal point of your passing game.
Right. He's not a tight end that's going to run away from people. He's a tight end that's going to come up big on 3rd and shorts and stuff like that. The thing is what Tez did such a good job of doing was when he was in the slot and he caught those bubble screens or he caught that 5-yard crossing route, he made one guy miss. And then that turns that into a 5-yard gain, into a 10, into a 12, into a 15. He also then, after he makes that catch, now they have to commit another safety to him. They have to have someone underneath and someone over the top of him. Well, when you do that, now Evan Stewart is all by himself, one-on-one, going vertical deep, right? And so that opens things up for everyone else. And it felt like against Michigan, you kind of had Trayshawn Holden fill that role.
Yes.
And not that Lowe did a bad job, but he also did an okay job of, at least with the bubble screens. He didn't go across the middle quite as much, but you kind of had those two piecemeal together what Tez does.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this game, whether it was because Trayshawn got hit super hard early on and that cost him a step, or maybe now teams have gotten some film on Lowe and so they understand how to guard him a little bit better now that he's played more than just, a few games in a row. It felt like you just didn't have that slot wide receiver that could make a man miss in this game, or even at times get open. And I don't know if that's more of what Maryland was doing to you or what you were doing to Maryland. Like, what sticks out to me is that Anthony said he saw times where wide receivers stopped running their routes when, Gabriel's out there running free and trying to make someone miss so that he can find a big play. You can't stop running your route there. That's where the big plays happen.
On the broadcast where I believe it was Holden picked up a pass interference penalty, he
Right.
stopped running on that ball and could have caught it.
Right.
But just didn't. And so,
that can't happen.
You're not going to get your best effort every single week of the season,
No.
but you're going to need a better effort than that, at least from the pass catchers against Wisconsin. I want to ask you too, Will. We've been alluding to this for a while. The O-line shuffle. No Marcus Harper. So today, insert Dave Iuli. Part of the I wonder if part of the reason for the maybe less explosiveness in the passing game is because people were in Dylan Gabriel's face a little bit more today, and I don't know if you were able to kind of hone in and circle Iuli at all, or what you saw from the O-line as a whole. But how did that unit fare without Marcus Harper?
Well, to be honest, you didn't give up any sacks.
Yeah.
And as I'm looking at it, you gave up 4 tackles for a loss. Well, 1.5 of them, so basically 2 of them are from Fuller, and then as you're going through it, DJ Samuels, he had 2 as well. So you look at it, and it's 2 big plays from 2 different guys. Is that those 2 just winning one-on-one matchups in those spots? Is that your offensive line having a little bit of a breakdown? I don't really know. I'm not going to go that far to say that. What I will say is whenever you switch someone up on the offensive line, you take a step back. And Dylan Gabriel has shown that when he doesn't feel 100% comfortable, some of those explosive chances that you saw him take in weeks previous, he won't take them anymore because he doesn't want to get hit. He took a hit in this game, and I can't remember if it was late in the first or early in the second quarter, but if you're an Oregon fan, you're very lucky that Dylan Gabriel is still playing football.
Oh, the guy kind of almost dove at his feet, or
the
got
guy
blocked into
hit his foot right before Dylan Gabriel's foot hit the turf.
Yeah.
If his foot hits the turf there and it catches, that foot is like his ankle is broken, minimum. It was almost a very, very dangerous hit.
Yeah, that's the kind of play you hold your breath on.
And I think when you get hit like that, especially as a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel, who has been known to be jumpy, you instantly just start getting the ball out of your hand. And so I think at times, maybe if he would have been a little bit more patient, he waits an extra second, because the O-line, I did feel like for the most part, gave him time. Maybe he could have found Evan Stewart deep on a route. Or maybe he could have found Justice Lowe across the middle and it just needed more time to clear. But I feel like what defenses have been able to do is when they get after Gabriel, he gets the ball out of his hand quicker, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can take away from your explosives because he's just looking for his first option that gets open. And it's going to look even worse explosiveness-wise because right now you don't have Tez Johnson, who you had early in the year, and he was the one who was making all the big plays.
More explosives needed on offense, but today they got some explosives from the special teams and the defense. You can consider that a tease for the Bellagio's very best player of the game. That is coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show right here on 1080 The Fan. But first, we toss it back over to Schultz as the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. A fairly easy drive. One of the easiest home of the season for you Duck fans so far. I-5 North looking completely clear out of Eugene. I see a smoky bit north of Albany on I-5, but that seems to be it on your way up to Portland. 49 in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calling for a low of 44. It'll be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend.
For over 45 years, Pacific Office Automation
Touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the Text to Win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. That's right, it is time for the Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. But before that, James Crepia of the Register Guard and the Oregonian, pointing out that this was a pretty fruitful 10th win of the season for Dan Lanning. By winning the 10th game of the season, he essentially ignites a clause in his contract that kicks in a 1-year extension for $8.4 million. Dan Lanning was already going to be your coach through 2030, now 2031. Now, I'm guessing that because of what Dan is doing right now, we will see this contract torn up and rewritten, but a nice night for Dan, who gets another year and another $8.4 million with the Ducks.
Locked
by a 10,
him
10-win season.
up.
Yeah.
Locked him up.
In a good way.
Locked him
Let's
up.
walk in a weird line. Okay. Let's move on to the Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. Kind of like we said, it was a weird game, but there were a handful of options out there. Will, who gets it this week?
Oh, this one, whenever you get a defensive touchdown, in my eyes, you should probably get the Bellagio's very best player of the game, Brandon Johnson. Obviously, he recovered the fumble that Jordan Birch caused. He then runs it back for a touchdown. He had a good game as well. He had 3 tackles. Just flying around, always around the football. I felt like it was finally time that we get someone on the defensive side of the football, especially since offensively it wasn't the most explosive game that you've ever had. So let's give one to Brandon Johnson. He deserves some pizza.
Brandon Johnson. Yeah, he is a guy that, I mean, I think that when you looked at what Oregon was bringing in this offseason, you're bringing in Jabbar Muhammad, who is an All-American caliber player. You're bringing in Kobe Savage, who was at least an All-Conference caliber player when he was with Kansas State, and coming to Oregon. But Brandon Johnson was less bandied about. There was a lot less pomp and circumstance and excitement about him, but he has been a fantastic contributor, not just today, but throughout the season. And also, I know I just mentioned Kobe Savage. Can we talk about the pop on the sideline from Kobe Savage today?
Holy
That was
cow.
loud contact.
Yeah, not to make that joke because everyone else will, but it was Savage.
It was
he
indeed.
Destroyed him on the sideline, especially
the dude bounced backwards.
Well, and now, like most of the time, you see defensive players when hits are about to happen on the sideline, they pull up because they don't want to get that penalty. To have the wherewithal to know, hey, I can get to him before he gets out of bounds and still get this type of a hit on somebody, that's huge from Kobe Savage. That was awesome.
You mentioned penalties, something that was still in my notes, and something I wanted to ask you about with coaching, discipline, focus, and all that surrounding penalties. Last week, Oregon, just 2 penalties at the Big House. This week, a whole heck of a lot more. On the other side of the break, want to get into that. Plus, our roving reporter, Dusty Hara,
he never quits, man.
His time is not done when he hangs up the phone. No, he's sending in other ideas for potential talking points specifically on this penalty conversation. We'll get to that coming up next. But first, we toss it over to Schulte, who has the Ducks game day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you once again, Buck. Still looking fairly clear out of Eugene. It's a very nice, easy drive home up I-5 north to Portland. No slowing to be reported. I do see a couple of Smokies, though. I-5 northbound. This is past Albany, actually right in between the middle of there and the Salem area. Right now, 49 in downtown Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 44. It'll be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend.
The home of dirt and spray.
I'm dirt. It's kind of nice to look at a Blazer team that's not 2 to 3 guys that are 6'2".
Very nice to have length and athleticism in the rotation. I want Kling Kong all night, every night.
Me too.
And watching a guy
And it's going to work. They'll get a first down and more. 30, 35, downfield hard. Across the 50. Birch run that ball that way. Looked like a running back. The fake punt.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back, Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show. The #1 Oregon Ducks winners. They improved to 10-0 on the season, 39-18. They are winners over Maryland, and in the process, Dylan Gabriel becomes the top, I guess, I'm trying to think about the best, easiest way to say this. He's been responsible for the most touchdowns in college football history. How about that?
He gets the most points.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he's not
Top
the
tutty.
touchdowns lead. I guess he is the touchdowns responsible for leader, but that's all clunky. I don't like that.
This is
Top
thrown
tutty?
for and ran
run
for, right?
Yeah, touchdowns accounted for leader.
I
But
mean,
like
he has
top
thrown
tutty.
for and ran for the most touchdowns in college football
Ever.
history. There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
it still doesn't roll off the tongue.
I'm
but
still
we,
going
nope,
top tutty.
We do. We do.
Top tutty.
Okay. I'm good with it. We do need to talk about the penalties though, because last week 2 penalties for 10 yards at the Big
Yep.
House. This week 12 penalties for 95 yards, and our good friend Dusty Hara, who was just on the airwaves with us not a half an hour ago, texted us and said he thinks that the game smelled of Maryland planting the seed with the refs that Oregon grabs on collisions with wide receivers at the top of routes. They were on high alert when Oregon was on D, and rightfully so, because they do often get handsy. So and he said on top of that, there were some dumb Oregon penalties to boot. No doubt about that. But you do start to wonder when you see such a big discrepancy. You go from 10 one week to 12 the next. Is the team really playing that differently? Is the focus or lack of discipline really that different? Or is the game being called a little bit different? And, I think it could be a little bit of A, a little bit of B, but what did you see out there, Will?
Well, I think that this week, first of all, there were more dumb penalties, I think, than I've seen since probably weeks 1 and 2, where it felt like offensively, Oregon kept shooting themselves in the foot early on in the season. This week, it was the defense. It was like every single time you got to stop, there was a penalty. Every single time that you made a big defensive play, there was a penalty. There was something wrong that kept Maryland's drives going. Because let's not get it twisted. Maryland had 18 points, but most of those points were helped by Oregon penalties. Like if you take out all the penalties, let's say penalties don't exist, it's mad and you've turned them off. Maryland doesn't score 18 points. Maryland might not score 7 points. So when you look at this game, it's defensively, how many dumb penalties were there? And I thought you had a few. And to be honest with you, while I didn't necessarily agree with the roughing the punter penalty early on, it cost you 3 points because it kept a drive alive and you weren't able to stop.
Well, and you had another one late in the game, and I'm guessing you as an offensive lineman, there's a part of you that's I'm not okay with this, but understands. But Nishad Strother shoved the defensive player who had just hit Dylan Gabriel, and that cost him 15 yards, and that took him out of field goal range. So now that's 6 points you've left on the board.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'd rather have a horse that you have to pull back on the reins than a horse that you gotta go. If someone hits my quarterback, I'm at least getting in their face. You'd like to have a little more self-control than that in that spot, but it happens. Now, what Dusty was talking about, I kind of noticed it late, and I wasn't sure if this was just what Oregon was doing in this game or if it's something that they've done all along and they were finally just getting caught with it. But I remember back in the Legion of Boom era with the Seahawks, they admitted, like, yeah, dude, we defensive PI every single play. What are you going to do? Call it every single play?
You know what? Honestly, that felt like the Ravens strategy on Thursday Night Football.
Right.
Like there was so much grabbing on every single play. You get to a point where the ref's like, I just can't throw the flag with every snap. I can't do it.
100%. And then you just hope that it doesn't bite you. Yeah. And there were many, many games that you can point to in the Legion of Boom era where it did not bite them. There were also a few games that you could point to where it did bite them. And so maybe this was one of those games where Maryland has a smart coaching staff too. They go to the referees early on and they say, hey, you need to watch what Oregon is doing at the top of the routes.
We've seen this, and this. Want you to be aware. And then all of a sudden the refs are like, maybe I should keep an eye on it. And then they see it. They're like, wow, coach was right. Bing. Happens all the time in sports, basketball, football.
100%.
Any sport where you can call holds, fouls, things like that. It's commonplace.
And sometimes you just get caught. Like everybody speeds. No one in this room, no one who's listening to this show hasn't sped.
Right.
The question is, how many times have you got caught speeding? Sometimes you get caught a lot.
Yeah, and
Sometimes
if you
don't get
speed
caught
all
at
the time, you're eventually just going to get caught. If you speed none of the time, you're not going to get caught, but you're also not pushing the envelope. So,
100%. Well, and then the other thing, the one critique that I would have for Oregon is it's like baseball. If you have an umpire that has a wider strike zone, time to start swinging at more balls.
Sure.
If they have called you now 2 or 3 times when you've grabbed someone at the top of the route, time to stop grabbing people at the top of the route.
Agreed.
So I would just like that adjustment to get made in the future if they get a staff that calls it tight. Now, I don't think that you're going to get a reffing crew that's going to call it tight much longer because you're going to be in some big games, and the last thing that a ref wants is to be the one who made a big decisive call in a big game.
Next week, the Ducks are in Camp Randall. What's been going on in the top 25 and game balls to hand out? It's all coming up in our final segment on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. But before we do that, the Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
The Ducks Game Day Secret Score is 920. That is the total poundage of Jordan Birch, Jernoris Wilson, and Josh Connerly leading to that big touchdown in the third quarter for the Ducks. Don't need to remember any of those names. Just remember that number of 920. And when you hear the 7 a.m. cue to call in the Monday Dirt and Sprague, you could be the winner of the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Now it's over to Schultze, who's got the Ducks Game Day traffic and weather, brought to you every 10 minutes by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. A fairly light drive, I-5 North headed back to Portland. I don't see any backups to report. Beware. A couple of Smokies, I-5 northbound about 3 miles past Albany. Right now, 49 in downtown Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for a low of 44. It's going to be in the 50s and cloudy when Oregon heads to Wisconsin to face the Badgers next weekend.
Football season is back, and that means Ducks Game Day traffic.
throw, incomplete, intercepted. 10 inside the 5. Tyson Johnson to the 4. There's your ricochet. Tip ball drill. Catch almost a pick 6. Tyson Johnson. Great quick hands. And then a return inside the 5.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app. And your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Wrapping things up on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, your Oregon Ducks winners 39-18. The number 1 team in the land improves to 10-0 on the season. Are you boys worried about a trip to Camp Randall next week?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes you need a game like this where you look a little bit sluggish on both sides of the ball to kind of wake yourself up and get ready to go. Now, this Wisconsin team, it's a fickle team. They're going to be prepared. They're better than their record, I think, shows because they had one of the more difficult schedules in the country. They're going to be ready. Get up early. Don't play with your food. You played with your food a little bit in this game. You know, you're only up 21-10 at half. If you're up 21-3, 21-7, 21-0, Maryland probably quits. But because they think they have a shot, they just have to find a way to stop you in the third quarter. All of a sudden, they're going to keep this game close because they have some belief. Don't let Wisconsin believe.
Oregon is going to kill them, and here's why. They could not put up more than 10 points against Iowa. Iowa! I don't care about this. The weather's not going to be as bad. I know it's kind of a trap game, but Oregon's going to smash them.
Wisconsin's kind of got their teeth kicked in the last couple, which gives me a little bit more hope. Looking at a look-ahead line, it appears the Ducks will be favored by somewhere between 11 and 12 points. That's all we have for you today on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. Thank you to Anthony Newman, Dusty Hara, Jordan Schultz, and Will Ortner. I'm Ryan Buckley, your Oregon Ducks winners, 39-18, the number 1 team in the land, 10-0, taking on Wisconsin for a 4:30 kickoff here on the West Coast next week. Good night, everybody.